Many of us have read Jesus' challenge to the rich young ruler and thought, is that for me today? Am I supposed to go and sell everything that I have and give it to the poor? That's what we're going to be talking about today on the Things You Don't Hear in Church podcast. My name is Derry.
And my name is Ethan, and you guys can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Instagram are the main places we are posting. We have stuff all over, anywhere you find a podcast as well, Apple, whatever, anywhere you go. But if you want to get a hold of us and see if we can cover a topic or already have, Instagram's a place to do it. So go ahead and subscribe. That's really helpful. And yeah, financial stewardship and Christianity, everyone's favorite topic. But the difference is here on the Things You Don't Hear in Church podcast, we're not going to ask to take a tithe after this. So,
Unless you want to.
Unless you want to. We'll plug our Patreon if you can. So yes, sell everything you have and go give it to our Patreon, and you'll have much thanks from us.
Yeah. And maybe God will give you treasure in heaven. Who knows?
Yeah, we don't know. We're not saying He will. We'll just be thankful.
We're not in charge of dishing out the treasure in heaven. We can pray and ask, but that's all we can do.
We're receptacles of other people's blessings, and what the Lord chooses to do with that is out of our control. But yeah, today's topic, right? There's that verse, go and sell everything, and you'll have treasure in heaven. And of course, if you're young and reading that as a new Christian, you're like, oh my gosh, like, what does that mean? And the guy's rich, and you're like, oh, do I count as rich? But then, maybe you go back and read the Old Testament, or you go back and stumble through Proverbs, and you see a verse that says, a good man leaves an inheritance for his kids, and you're like, what the heck? What? How do you do both? How do you both leave an inheritance for your kid and sell everything and follow Jesus? And so that's the kind of tension we want to kind of sit in today and think about responsible financial stewardship as Christians. And, are we supposed to look poor but be rich?
Yeah.
Can you spend your money on a ton of nice things and live lavishly? Is there give and take with that? So, Daria, what are your thoughts?
Yeah.
You want to set that up a little bit more or start going in whatever direction you want?
Yeah, I think we'll talk about all those things for sure today. Those will be like a big part of it. But I also want to talk about a challenge that I had a friend actually challenge me in probably like 12 or 13 years ago. And he said that he knew a couple that were like living at like the poverty line on purpose. And there's a lot of like Christian leaders who've done this. But they thought that like there's so many people that could use the amount of money that they make. They're making, I think, like $100,000 a year. And they're like, we don't need this. Like our kids are out of the house and like they are doing well. And so we just live off of like $50,000 a year because they like own their house and stuff. And we give everything else away because we just don't need that amount of money. It's going to sit in our bank, or we're going to help people, not only here, but around the world. And so that's like a big challenge. Like most of us don't live lives of that kind of generosity and don't even think about it. Maybe we have the desire to, but we're like, oh, but I have bills to pay and I got to make sure like my future's secure and stuff like that. So we want to talk about all those things today. How do we interact with money? How do we interact with generosity? Because there's also like a proximity thing here of like, yeah, maybe like the person that's your neighbor needs to pay rent, but if they don't pay rent this month, like they're not going to die tomorrow. And there's like a lot of people overseas that like they might die tomorrow if they don't get a meal. Like there's a lot of people that starve to death all over the world every day, every year. And there's a lot of people that could use medications that are readily available to us, but they don't have the finances for it overseas. So there's always some kind of financial need, whether we can see it or not see it. And so there's this challenge of, man, should I buy that new truck or should I buy those new like pair of shoes that I don't necessarily need so that I can like help these people, even though I don't see them? And I'm not saying that that's what everybody should do, but that's what we want to talk about. We want to discuss the tension there of like, how much money do we spend on ourselves? Is there like a percentage? Is there a limit? Is it up to the individual? Should it be nothing so that we can help people? I want to go over it because it is very important to talk about. And I think a lot of us don't think about it all the time. So that's what we're going to go through. But Ethan, do you want to go through the Bible verses first, just to like kind of square those away?
Yeah, that'll be a good foundation to help people see the biblical tension here, and then we can kind of pull all the verses together, hopefully, towards the end and help. We'll try our best to put a nice bow tie on it, but cool. There's probably not a nice bow tie there because it's pretty nuanced.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Mm.
Okay, let's start with Luke 18. Sound good? I can't speak.
There you
Rich young
go.
ruler. There we go. Okay, I can read it. A certain ruler asked him, talking to Jesus, "Good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" "Why do you call me good?" Jesus answered. "No one is good except God alone. You know the commandments. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not murder. You shall not steal. You should not give false testimony. And honor your father and your mother. All these I have kept since I was a boy," he said. When Jesus heard this, he said to him, "You still lack one thing. Sell everything you have and give it to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven, and then come and follow me." And when he heard this, he became very sad because he was very wealthy. Jesus looked at him and said, "How hard is it for the rich to enter the kingdom of God? Indeed, it is easier for the camel to go through the eye of a needle than for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of God." Those who heard this asked, "Who then can be saved?" Jesus replied, "What is impossible with man is possible with God." And so, I mean, that's a pretty big challenge, right? Like, Jesus is saying to this guy who has a lot of money, like, "Hey, your money is the thing that's controlling you right now. Like, you got to get rid of it if you want to follow me. Like, it can't come with you to follow me, basically." But the first thing that I think of when I think of these passages is that Jesus never puts like a monetary value limit on something. Like, he never says, "Do you have over this amount of money? Then you shouldn't have that much," right? But he's talking to like a class of person, like a rich person, right? That's all he identifies him at. He doesn't say he makes like whatever amount of money. He just says that he's rich. And he says, "Hey, if you're rich, it's going to be harder for you to enter the kingdom of heaven." But that it's not technically impossible, right? Because people say, "Hey, how is it possible for anyone to go to heaven then?" And he says, "What is impossible with man is not impossible with God." So it's a big challenge. What do you hear when you read this, Ethan?
Yeah, the first thing I would point out is that the problem with the rich young ruler is not the riches themselves. It's that he loves the riches more than he loves God. He loves the riches more than he's willing to give up to follow God. And so that's the first thing where it's like, okay, with that in mind, the things aren't the problems, it's the attention to the things. And if
Yeah.
you love God, you will have an appropriate relationship with your belongings that the Lord asks you to give them up, then you give them up. God or Jesus, same being, didn't tell, was it Nicodemus, the short one? He didn't tell. No, Nicodemus came in the night. There was another Pharisee who came in, and
Zacchaeus.
Zacchaeus. He didn't tell Zacchaeus
Yeah.
to give away his belongings. Zacchaeus saw the beauty of Jesus, was so blown away that Jesus would come and be with him that he repented, and the natural overflow was like, "Oh, I've gained all this by injustice. I'm going to give it away 4 times as much as I have taken." So if you take from like 1,000 people $100, that's what, like $100,000, is that right? And then you have to give up 4 times as much to people back. That means you're giving away $400,000. You see how like that guy was like, "I'm giving away everything." He had a lot of stuff that he collected to give away 4 times as much as he ever took, and that was a natural byproduct, right? So he loved God. Jesus didn't tell him to do this. He just did it as a natural response. And so one question you could draw from that rich young ruler story is like, okay, so the things aren't the problem, it's a love for God. Then thinking, okay, so if I love God, what does it look like to use my things for his glory? Maybe you get saved and you have like a super big house, right? And it's like you have, maybe it's you and your wife and you don't have any kids, but you have like a mansion and you have like all these cars and you're like living by yourself. You and your wife, no kids. There might be an aspect where you're thinking like, okay, what am I doing here? Like, if I love God now and I'm a Christian now and I have like millions of dollars and it's just me and my wife, we don't have any kids, it's like the money's not building any wealth for, like, there's not like any kids to think about, right? If you had like 8 kids, it makes sense to have a big house because you have a lot of kids. So you like Home Alone. So there's like the kind of question you got to think about, like, what is that appropriate response? All in all, with the rich young ruler, your priority has to be loving God over loving your belongings. If you do that, then you will be able to sacrifice or give up whatever it will be to follow him, and that won't be a hindrance. So that's a starting place. But yeah, I wouldn't think merely having things is the problem, but it's the love of things.
Absolutely. I think that's backed up as well by verses like Matthew 6:24, where God says, no one can serve two masters, similar to what you brought up. Either you will hate one and love the other, for you will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. And so if we go back to Luke 18, Jesus lists like a list of things, right? He lists adultery. He lists honoring your parents. He lists murder. He lists false testimony. Does he say honor your parents? Hold on, let me read it again.
Probably.
No, he doesn't. Oh, yeah. Honor your father and your mother. Yeah, that's at the end. And so he has this list of commandments, right? This is from the 10 Commandments. And the guy's like, yeah, like I've done all those things. But the one that he didn't list, there's obviously more than one. But one of the ones he didn't list is not having any other God before you. And so if we include this Matthew 6 passage, it seems like God is saying like, hey, you can't serve two masters. You can't serve another God while like serving me. So I think, we can make a stronger biblical case for this, but not fully what the episode is about. But I think that's a good analogy, like you said, to like, what are you serving? Is your money ruling you? And this also isn't a situation, though, for the person that is rich, where it's like an Isaac situation, where God's like, oh, like I need you to sacrifice it. And then you go to sacrifice, and he's like, oh, just kidding. Like, I just want to fix your relationship, so you don't have to get rid of your money. Like, he's really asking the rich young ruler to get rid of his money. Mm-hmm. Like he's saying, hey, you serve a God that's not me. And like Ethan pointed out, 100% it's about the relationship. It's not about the money, right? Because the Bible also says that it's the love of money that's a root of all kinds of evil. So there's nothing necessarily inherently wrong with having something of value that you can use, because that's what money is, right? Having something of value you can use. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But like Ethan said, what is your relationship to that thing? Is it ruling you? Is it what's giving you security? Is it what you're putting your trust and your faith and your hope in? Is it the thing that's like making you secure? And of course, I'm adding all those things. You can find those in Scripture, but those like the lessons at least I've learned from those. And so, is it ruling you? And if it is, it seems like Jesus is being pretty straightforward. Like you should get rid of it. Mm-hmm. And so, getting rid of all of your money, I don't think is for every person, but having other gods before God is for every person. Like that's something that everybody is in danger of doing. And money, because not everybody has a lot of it, not everybody is in danger of like having that be their God. But 100%, you can, at the same time, you can have the pursuit of money be your God, just like you could have the love of money once you have it be your God as well. So there's sort of two different angles there as well. Anything you want to add to that, Ethan, before I keep going?
Yeah. It's everyone's required to get rid of the idols. Not everyone's required to get rid of the money, like you said. And what helped me when I was thinking about that is Jesus didn't tell Peter to get rid of his business. Like Peter had a small family business where they just were fishermen. They take the fish to the market and they sell it. You know, there's those prosperity entrepreneur Christians who are like, see, he's an entrepreneur and God's blessing his bit. And it's like, they try to make it this weird like grind set hustle thing. It's probably a modest like they're Jews. They're not rich. Like the rich Jews were the Sadducees and Pharisees and scribes. If you were a fisherman, you were not rich in first century Jerusalem or Israel. And Jesus does allow them to have a ton of fish brought in. It'd be like if a modest, I don't know, factory worker all of a sudden was like the Lord gave him $1 million and the idea was like use that to bless your community or fuel ministry. But he wasn't like a baller who just was bringing in millions a year like I hear some people make that argument. Sure. But yeah, he didn't tell Peter to give up the business, the family business, because you see Peter go back to that multiple times throughout the story. It's a source where they like get some money, they go on missions. They get some money, they go on missions and stuff like that. And so that's really interesting there. But also the flip side of the rich young ruler is that if you think that it's all about getting rid of stuff, then you risk falling into the idea that both Derry and I have seen, where you think that you can't have nice things at all. And if you ever have a nice thing, you must give it away. I don't go that far. I think it's really noble that those people decide to live below the poverty or at the poverty line. That's amazing. I don't think that's for everybody. It's kind of like, you hear people who go on these like super fast, like I'll go on this many fast all the time. It's like, that's awesome. Like if you can do that, obviously, so a lot of people, Todd White did that, found out later from Mike Winger it was a fraud. Anyways, people like, so there are people who do have these amazing callings that are very sacrificial. You think of like what's his name, John Piper, basically like a mega church pastor, although just not flashy and trendy. Always lived, as far as I know, humbly in the inner city in Minnesota and never moved. Like lived there before he got famous and wealthy, and just never left, and was super generous from what I hear. So that doesn't mean he didn't have nice things, right? He had a house. He wasn't selling his house and being homeless. He probably had a car, and he had enough money to fix his car when it broke down. So there's that aspect where, you can have nice things. And one way to think about generosity, Derry, I'd be curious on your thoughts on this, is how do you qualify generosity? Because one argument could be like, yes, you can give money away. There's a lot more ways to be generous than just with money. You can have really nice things to serve your community. Like I'm thinking, what if there was a very rich man who's like, I own 5 to 7 cars, and I'm involved in my church community, and I'm always letting my church members use the car. I'm paying the bills on them. I'm paying the insurance. I'm paying them off, or I've already paid them off, but I'm letting people use them for free. Like if a mom's car breaks down, she needs to get her kids to school, use my car as long as you need till get you back on your feet. Oh, a young kid just moved here and needs a car to get around. Sure, he can use it, And someone could say like, oh, he could just buy people cars, but it's like, yeah, but what you're not saying is he's paying all the bills for the car, letting someone use it in this hypothetical situation for a while. That would be someone who would require quite a bit of wealth to maintain that ability to be that generous with resources. And so I'm just wondering, like, you can have physical things and be generous with those physical things and not be attached to those physical things and have really nice things to serve the community. Like there might be, like, tools are super expensive. If there was someone in a church community who's like, I have a whole pole barn full of tools. Anyone from the community can always come and borrow them for their projects at any time. That'd be awesome. I'm sure so many people would find that such a blessing because tools can be super expensive. And so, that's a great way to be able to serve your community and be generous without just giving things away. So what are your thoughts on that?
100%. Yeah. I mean, it's about value, right? Like money isn't the only thing of value. Money isn't real, right? We're just pretending that like these dollars have value for some reason.
Okay, so
we're really talking
the gold standard.
Yeah. We're really talking about value, and even like gold. Like we're just pretending gold has value. Like it's shiny.
Oh, gold! I think gold has. That'd be an interesting conversation on value. Do things have intrinsic value? The gold might have intrinsic value.
Not. No, of course they don't. I mean, like those things, they don't have value. Like if someone wants to make something gold, then that has value to them.
Is it beautiful?
Right? It depends on the individual.
I don't know. So is beauty? Beauty might be objective.
Beauty is objective.
Okay, so beauty is objective.
At the same time, there's different levels of beauty.
Then gold is objectively valuable.
Sure, but how valuable is it? So there's obviously different levels of beauty, different levels of value. Anyways, so it's about value, and yes, so you could be generous in giving away something of value that you already own or will continue to own. That's not like $1. You know what I mean? It doesn't have like, it's not actual money. So 100%, you're right. You can be generous in that way. But I think the challenge still stands from the rich young ruler to somebody of like, evaluate if wealth rules you. Ask yourself genuinely, if God asked me to give away everything I own right now and not know how I'm going to pay my mortgage or my rent next month or food or whatever, would I say yes? And immediately some emotions are going to come up, right? You're going to think, okay, well, where am I going to make the money to provide for myself to be able to pay for those things? And you might get some anxiety of like, okay, well, how am I going to retire now? And who's going to take care of me? And where are these things going to come from? And you start problem solving, and you get a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of a fear. And that's how you can know like, oh, okay, like who do I actually trust for my security? Who do I actually trust as my provider? Like those things reveal in your heart immediately, like very quickly, at least for me, like what it is that I serve. because I try to ask myself this question every once in a while, because I don't want that like love of money to sneak into my heart. And all the time there's a little bit of a reaction of like, okay, yeah, I start to problem solve, and then I remember it wouldn't matter. Next month, the Lord would provide for me some way. He would get the money to me. He would show me a place where I could work or a job that I could have. Or, I mean, I already have a job, but like some extra way I could make money, or he'd send money to me somehow. He would ask someone to give me money, or someone to buy me groceries, or provide for me a place to stay if I lost the place that I was in. Like, do I trust him? Is he actually God? If God was the one to ask you to give away everything, would you do it? And obviously we're going to say yes. It's fine that there's emotions, that there's some fear there, but it's what you do in the face of the fear. Obviously that's important. But God's challenging our hearts, which is why he says like, hey, he says that adulterers won't enter the kingdom of heaven. Like the people that are sexually immoral won't enter the kingdom of heaven. The murderers, the idolaters won't enter the kingdom of heaven. Like he states it over and over and over in scripture, right? People that practice lifestyles of these kinds of sins aren't followers of Christ, and they're not going to enter the kingdom of heaven. The same goes for rich people. People who love money, they're not going to enter the kingdom of heaven, which is what Jesus says in this passage. So it's pretty important for us to examine, hey, do I love money? And take it pretty seriously. And if you do love money, maybe you should sell everything you have. Because like it would be better that you would enter the kingdom of heaven than for you to have a lot of stuff for 70 years on this earth. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that seems to be Jesus's solution here. But it isn't the ask for everybody, because like Ethan said, it's really about like what your relationship is to money, because there's lots of other places in scripture where like Proverbs that Ethan mentioned, Proverbs 13 to be exact, where God says like, hey, leave an inheritance for your children. So accumulating wealth clearly is not an anti-biblical thing. Like you can accumulate wealth and you can make sure your kids like are provided for and stuff. To provide for your family is a very biblical thing. There's many more Proverbs besides Proverbs 13 that talk about that. So it is for sure something we should do. But even look at passages like in Luke 6, where Jesus says that the people who are poor are blessed. Blessed are the poor. And he has like a woe to the rich right after that. Like he's flipping the cultural narrative on his head, which he does a lot, like in 5 through 6 of Luke, where he says that it's like the upside down kingdom. And he's showing how like what the world views as good, we don't, like in the kingdom of God, that's not necessarily how things work, because they really viewed it through the lens of Proverbs of like you do this happens. If you're blessed, you're going to be rich. And if you're poor, you're going to be cursed. And Jesus is flipping that on his head and saying, hey, look, sometimes people are poor and sometimes people are rich. And actually being rich can be a cancer to you sometimes. And being poor can make you more humble at certain times. And so he's flipping those things on their heads and examining people's hearts, as he often does, not just like what is happening in their lives or outside of their hearts. So anyways, something you want to say about that, Ethan?
Yeah, it's super interesting. So not only does Proverbs say that a good man leaves enough for his kids. First Timothy says that if anyone does not provide for his relatives, and especially for the members of his household, he has denied the faith. He has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. Yeah. So if you're talking about financial stewardship, you're like, okay, your very first priority, like, yes, you could give away all your money to the poor and you're gonna be like, I have treasure in heaven. But it's like, if you gave all your money away to the poor because you were zealous and wanted to pursue God, and you have a wife and kids and now you made them homeless, like God might be mad at you. Unless God told you to do that. And then I'm sure he would confirm it to your wife and you and your wife would be on the same page. But if you 100%. Just like, in this fake example, just zealously were like, okay, God, you have it all, here you go. And then you're like, wife, I sold the house, I sold our car, I gave our pension away, I got rid of our life insurance policy, gave up our 401k, I got rid of all our retirement, gave it to the Salvation Army. How blessed are we? You'd be like, oh my gosh, you're like, you just like, God's gonna be like,
did God tell you to do that?
You fool. Like, you're worse than an unbeliever. So it shows like a real responsibility, which makes me think that I think this, what we're talking about, the financial stewardship, how you live and
Mm.
generosity, could be like a sliding scale as you move through life, right? When you're young and single, when I was young and single, I obviously was in YWAM, so we had a lot provided with the house and all that stuff. But it's like I didn't really need a lot to live on. And like we were talking to this guy who was a missions pastor about some finances when we got married, and he told me, he's like, Ethan, when you were young and single, you could live by like flying by the seat of your pants. It didn't matter. Like you didn't care. He's like, now you have a wife, you have a little bit more responsibility. Like you have to provide, you have to consider her needs, and can't just be like, oh, I'll be fine, whatever. Like you have to think about it in a little bit. And I'm like, oh yeah, the more I've grown and the longer I've been married, it's like, oh wow, that's so true. Like, I have a responsibility before God to create a life that is hopefully as stress-free as possible for my wife, my future kids, where they can grow up in safety. Because I think it does something. I think it's good for kids to grow up in an environment that's not financially stressed. I don't know if that's
100%.
controversial at all. Now, obviously, you can have a kid grow up in a stressful financial environment and they can be okay. They turn out right. They turn out fine. Happens all the time. But, if you could choose to help your kid grow up in a less financially stressed environment, I'm sure everyone would choose to do that. So I think that you could say that how much you give away ebbs and flows with your season of life. When you're single, you could give tons of stuff away because you have no responsibility, no lives that you're responsible for. But and we're speaking from a man's perspective and a more of a traditional perspective.
There's a difference between men and women. Yeah.
I am. Yeah, at least I am.
Yeah.
And so when you have a wife and you have a kid, now it's like, oh, I used to give up like quote unquote 80% of my money towards missions or towards outreach or this. Now I can't. Now I have to like pull back down to like maybe even 30% because I gotta start saving for a house. I gotta think about we bought a house and my wife, I don't want her to work, so now I have to have a life insurance policy in case something happens. I gotta pay off that. And I got to make sure that I don't have to work till I'm 80. So let me put money away for retirement. And when we were in missions, bro, when we were in YWAM, genuinely people when we first met in Yosemite, someone was like, is it ungodly to have a retirement fund? And someone was presenting this as like, they were like, I think it might be a lack of faith to have retirement. And I was like, what? I was like, you got to change that view. Like, I think God like wants us to put away money for retirement, like Proverbs says. And so, if you're using your money right, you can, obviously give away a ton the whole time. Don't stop giving. You want to give money, but you pull back and ebb and flow. And as the seasons change, it'll change. But if you set yourself up for a successful future, you could compound your investments to make so much money that you're like, wow, I have so much for my kids and enough to give away. Like when you retire, you could spend the next 20 years of your life being the most generous people anyone ever knows. Because you've set yourself up well. So you can't like despise investments and financial stewardship, but you also can't neglect giving. And so that's the question where we talk about then nice things. And the question is like, you talked about a truck earlier, like a really, really nice truck. You say for a while, get a brand new truck. It's like, you could afford that truck, but the two questions are like, well, one, you could use that money to serve people and give it away, but two, you could also use that money to put yourself in a better position later down the line. So is it necessary? If you're not using your truck for like, I don't know. But the problem with that is like, okay, so you could buy a less expensive truck. Oh, but it's still new. Okay, fine. I'll buy a used truck. It's like, oh, but you bought a 2025 used truck. Okay, I can buy a 2015 used truck. They go, well, why do you need a truck? I said, fine, I'll get a beater from like 2002. That's gonna like, how far do you go with that?
Right.
You gotta find the middle ground.
Really like, there's not hard and fast monetary rules. Like we said at the beginning, right? God doesn't put like a monetary value on it. He doesn't say people who make this much money are in danger. People who make this much money are not in danger, right? Talks about the person's heart. And so the line is going to be a little different for everybody. And maybe it's not a line, but like how we use our money is going to be different. But no matter what, it's going to be influenced by generosity, by taking care of our families, and by the voice of God and what he asks us to do. Because you referenced Timothy, I wanted to read 1 Timothy 6:17-19 really quick, just for like a good, like this is like Paul's perspective, it seems like, on what Jesus is saying. And he says, command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth. So like not making wealth their God, basically, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. Command them to do good and be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share. In this way, they will lay up treasure for themselves as a firm foundation for the coming age, so that they may take hold of the life that is truly life. Seems like kind of commenting on the verse because he's talking about treasure in heaven. Jesus also talks about, and he doesn't say that people can't be rich, right? He says, hey, this is the advice I give to rich people. If you're rich, watch out that you're not loving it. Watch out that it's not your provider, and watch out that you're being generous and sharing and you're doing good deeds. That's what you should really be rich in. So which is pretty much what we've been saying, right? I think he sums it up pretty well. Like the attitude that we should have if we have a lot of money towards people, towards giving, towards our money. But Ethan, I love that you brought up the more philosophical point of that's kind of different for everybody of how do we use our money. And this kind of applies to anybody out there, right? Because at least if you're in America, most of us don't have the money to buy a house unless you live in Michigan.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. So most of us don't have the money to buy a house in most of the states that we live in, but almost all of us have the ability to buy like a cool new pair of shoes, right? And so most people could afford like $100 pair of shoes, but they know that they could buy like a $50 pair of shoes, right? And so you like that's kind of the dichotomy you were making earlier, Ethan, of like what kind of truck do you get and how used do you go, how new do you go, what year do you do, right? Because you could technically use that money to help somebody. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, there might not be someone that's like next to you that is going to die if you don't like give them $50 right now, but there's someone overseas that might, right? And so there's this proximity issue. So what do you think about all of that philosophically? Like, what should we be giving away? What should we be saving? Is it something we should even make a hard line on as the church, or is it just purely up to the individual?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, the New Testament doesn't prescribe that we tithe 10%. And I've heard people say that if you really calculate how much giving was required in Israel, it's actually like more close to 30% than 10.
Yeah,
I've never done the
30%.
math, but it's something like that. And so,
Robin, shout out TikTok pastor, who I think his name now is the Pope of TikTok or something like that.
Yeah.
Or no, the
Really?
evangelical Pope.
I was going to
It's
say,
the
he's
evangelical
not
Pope,
Catholic. That's hilarious. We should have him on again. I miss that guy.
We should, yeah. He's a fantastic Bible teacher, and he does a really good breakdown of what the actual percentage was for the Levites and for the people and how that translates to the New Testament, which I really like. But yeah, like you said, there's not a prescription, but OT, it was much more closer to like 30%.
Yeah. And so what we do know is the Bible says that God loves a cheerful giver. So that also tells us our attitude towards giving. We should enjoy it. It should be a joy to serve and to give. And so if you're not happy about giving, you might want to sit down and pray and ask yourself and ask God, like, okay, God, I'm sad to depart my money like this. What's going on in my heart? He'll tell you. He'll let you know. And because he loves to convict us and make us like him. And so that'd be the first thing, like cheerful giving. Genuinely, this is like, I think how Christianity is like super cool in that it causes people to kind of level up in a way where it's like, if you're going to think about, okay, biblical financial stewardship, I want to be generous. If you're going to be generous while also being wise and putting away money for the future, you're going to have to look at your finances and see how much you have coming in, how much you have going out, and you're going to have to make restrictions where you're like, maybe just because we grew up in a time in our life where everyone said 10%, that could be a good start. Maybe 10% is a good start. You could be like, all right, I'm going to get 10%. So I get paid at, I think like a $3,000 would be a fair a month for like a young single person, maybe even $4,000 depending on the job. Put 10% away. Okay, so $300 at least goes away. Now what can I do with this? And then you break that down, like what are your bills, of course, obviously. And then whatever's left over, you could put savings, you could put insurance, all that stuff. But then whatever's left over, and I would factor even like fun money. Like my wife and I have a budget for fun money. It's like we have a social / date budget and fun money. And so, and we broke everything down so we know our guidelines and our gates on how to play with our money. So I have a certain amount every month that I can use on whatever I want. And that makes me happy because I'm like, I can spend this. And we still have enough left over. We're like, okay, we get to be generous with this much. And we are pretty frugal. Like we restrict ourselves quite a bit. We like maxed out our budget for our groceries last week and we had like a week left and we're like, let's just eat the whatever we have until we get to the end. And like by the last 2 days, we're like, we have like only rice left. We have to go to the store. Like February's in 2 days. Let's just go. So, we did our February shopping, but we have our guidelines set up to where we can live pretty frugally, save money, put money away. And also we would like to buy a house eventually. So we have that budget. But then we're like, okay, so cool. Look at this, what we have. We can just give this away. And every month it's kind of fun to see what's left over to be like, what can we save or give away? And honestly, like we do need to get our giving higher than it is. I would like to. We just haven't joined a church yet, so we haven't been able to tithe because not been able to, but haven't been able to give to a church. We just haven't given to a church because we haven't committed to a church yet. Maybe that's not a good idea. Maybe just give to whatever church you're at on the Sunday. I haven't answered that question yet. And so, basically what I'm saying is what's really cool about Christianity is if when you're focusing on giving and being wise with your money, it forces you to budget. And if you're going to get good at budgeting, well, then you are going to be taken care of in life. And you're going to have to restrict yourselves and it's going to suck. Sometimes you're going to be like, oh, I could have like $50 to go to the bar every weekend. It's like, do you need to go to the bar every weekend? That's a lot of alcohol. Do you need that? Like, can you do 1 or 2 drinks and go for $30 and then save $80 a month and either put that away or give it away?
Sure.
So I think it's like also a relation to how much you're spending on yourself for your pleasures. That'd be a good thing. Like you have your responsibilities, and then after your responsibilities, what is the ratio between like generosity and pleasure? And that would be a really interesting question. We're like, am I spending a ridiculous amount more on myself and my fun than I am helping others? That's a fantastic question. I don't know if there needs to be an even split, like 50-50, but what do you think?
I can't give you a hard line on it, but these are my overall thoughts. I think Americans and people in the West in general have far too high of a consumerist culture, and we spend a lot of money on ourselves. And a lot of us, including myself, are often skirting the line of being addicted to the dopamine of buying something new, even if it's small. Always eating out, always buying something new from Amazon or from Temu or whatever you're buying stuff from. And they're small things, but we want that like dopamine hit, like once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week. I'm shopping, I'm looking, I'm scoping things out. Like, what can I buy? And it's unhealthy, honestly. The other thing that I would say, and the opposite response to that is like, we individually are not responsible for everybody in the world, right? We're responsible to be generous, and God's going to use our generosity to take care of people. But I am not responsible for people starving in Africa, right? I'm not going to be the one to solve that issue. And like the answer to that question is also not just throwing money at it, right? It's a very complex economic question. So I can take that weight off of my shoulders of like, okay, I can never buy anything for myself ever again. I need to give all of my money to the poor, right? I can sort of take that weight off my shoulders, but I still need to be very challenged about how and where I spend my money. Not only for like what the organization I'm giving my money to does, kind of a different question we've also talked about on the show, but what my relationship with money is and what my relationship with buying things is. Those are sort of the guideline philosophies that I go off of continually being challenged about my relationship with money. I want to read a couple like quotes from some church fathers that I think are pretty good. And now, obviously, church fathers are not gospel, and so you take these with a grain of salt. But I think it's good to see that some Christians have this perspective. Not all Christians. There's other church fathers that say opposite things to this, but it's good to see this perspective sometimes. Okay, so Basil the Great says that, and he lived in the 4th century, says that the bread that you do not use is the bread for the hungry, and the garment hanging in your wardrobe is the garment of the naked. So basically saying like, hey, you got 2 of something, you can give that away. And that could be somebody else's. And hey, you don't finish your plate, you could take that and give it to somebody. And obviously living in a different culture than ours, but we can still translate that sentiment to our modern day pretty easily. John Chrysostom, very famous guy. Yeah.
Before you get to John Chrysostom, I'm curious about your thoughts on that quote, Basil the Great, before we move past it too quickly. In our culture, or do you want me to let you get through the church fathers and come back?
I was just going to read John. John says the same thing. He just says, not to share one's wealth with to not share one's wealth with the poor is theft of the poor, which I thought was interesting. But just similar sentiment.
Yeah. Okay, so in America, there are way too many, like too many things in general.
Yeah.
Like both of us have so many things hang up in our closet that like I probably wear. I mean, there's one jacket I'll probably get rid of because I genuinely haven't worn it in like a year. So I'm like, I don't need this anymore. Right. But with that being said, there are so many thrift shops, $3 clothes, almost like, and a bunch, and if not $3, there's a ton of free stuff for like the truly homeless. Yeah. So with that being said, there is so much going around that is not on like terrible quality. Excuse me. It's late. So with that being said, there's so much going around. How do we live that out? If like, oh, the jacket and that your extras is for the naked. Like in our country, there's like literally not very many naked. Like probably zero.
Close to it.
Because there's so much government help, which is great. And it's like in most countries, I'd say there's probably not very many people who are truly like that. So like, what does that look like? Like, sure, I can give my stuff away to like a thrift store, but like there's not like anyone's needing it as far as like truly destitute.
Yeah. I think there are some people who do need clothes, but it's obviously not the problem that it was in the 4th century, right? Where people are like, I'm cold. I am actually just cold and I kind of need more clothes.
No, right? Socks. I know the socks are the most requested homeless item.
Right.
For sure, but yeah.
Yeah. So like there are some instances, but it's not like the thing, right? Giving someone clothes is not the thing they usually ask for. Food is usually a bigger insecurity for people than their clothing is. But I mean, both those things are still an insecurity in certain places, just not like it was in the 4th century. So that's why I say you have to translate it, right? Like for example, if I sold every shirt that I have behind me right now, I could make maybe $100. Like my clothes just aren't worth that much. I've gotten almost everything that I have from a thrift store. And I probably have like 30 shirts behind me or something like that. If you're not watching on YouTube or on Spotify right now, my closet's behind me. Maybe $100 I can sell them for. And so like $100, like I could just give $100 away and keep the clothes that I have, or I could just donate the clothes to people who need them. I can 100% do that too. So like you can do all of these multiples of options. The point is though, is about the excess that you have. Like we have a lot of excess that we could give away. Maybe somebody doesn't need clothes. They don't need food. They can't pay their rent. Or for a lot of people, they don't have some kind of way to get an operation. They don't have medical insurance or something, and they need help getting money for medical insurance. Like we can crowdfund somehow and get their bills paid, or get them to be able to afford rent, or to pay for their grocery bill this week. Like there are many things that you can do, and that's just to like your neighbor, which I think the Bible is more focused on, obviously, because it was impossible to know about things that were thousands of miles away at the time. But there's things that are happening globally now that you could be a part of. That is obviously a little bit more complex because it's farther away. You don't see it. There's a lot of scams out there. You don't want to get scammed, obviously, and give your money away to people who are trying to get it from you with bad motives. So you obviously have to be wise about it still, but there's always going to be ways that you could be helping. And so I think God is seriously challenging us as people to be like, man, do I really need this much clothes? Do I really need this new, like, really cool truck? Like those things are cool. God gives people blessings. I'm not saying you can't have a truck. Like it's clear from the New Testament and from the Old Testament that there are some people in there that are rich and have really nice things. And God tells them like how they should use those things. And it sometimes tells them to get rid of them, like we went over. But it's clearly not like evil to have nice things. So it's not like you shouldn't have that truck or you couldn't have it. But the point is, like, could you, or would it be better if you gave it away? Like if you gave the $100K away that it would cost to buy that truck, and you bought a $50K truck, you gave $50K away to an orphanage that's going to sustain them for a long time. Like there's ways that you could donate and ways that you could help that would store up treasure in heaven. It's a good way to put it. Rather than getting you something that would be treasure here on earth. It's just a challenge to people. Like, where are we storing up treasure? But also, what is our relationship with money? And it's going to be different for everybody, what we buy and what we have in excess and how we use that. We're going to be responsible, just like we're responsible for the words that we say. We're going to be responsible with the stewardship of the things that God's given us. And generosity seems to be like a really important thing to God.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder, here's a fun thought. So there's not much written to the middle class in the Bible. And it's like there's woes to the rich and there's blessings to the poor. That's in James chapter 4, right? It's like, woe to you who are rich, and it's like, blessed are you who are poor. I think it's 4 or 5. But it's really interesting because it's like in the culture, there wasn't a middle class. Like, or there was a very, maybe probably almost non-existent middle class. And so you're like, oh, interesting. I wonder, like, what does God have to say for the middle class? If you have a society, obviously our middle class apparently has been shrinking. I'm not an economic person, so I only see thumbnails on YouTube. But like, if you have a robust middle class, then it's like, oh, well, what would that look like? And then I think of Christians, this would be interesting. Could the middle class be a result of Christianity? Because the hyper rich give away to the poor and help the poor, and the poor then, the money gets distributed and everyone ideally is on a level playing field. And so that'd be interesting to think like the tracing of a middle class with the growth of Christianity through nations would be a fantastic, cool study. Because I wouldn't be surprised if there's a correlation there, because what would be the point of generosity if there's no God and it is just survival of the best, right?
Yeah.
That's why we have billionaires who just pretend to be generous. And it's like, there's no reason to have a billion. I think something you talked about a while ago, or you asked me personally, was like, can a Christian ever be a billionaire? And I'm like, I don't think so. I don't think, one, you can become a billionaire and be a moral person, but two, I don't think it's moral to be a billionaire. Like you have 1,000, 1 million, you have a stack, you have 1,000 stacks of $1 million. Like you are not a generous person. Like there's no way you become a billionaire if you're being generous. So, it's a fun question. Yeah.
Yeah. Like this is a topic that genuinely challenges me every time we talk about it, or every time I read it in scripture or hear a sermon on it. Like I want to be more generous every time. Like, and I get really challenged by people like John Wesley, who's the founder of Methodism, I believe.
He was Anglican, and he never left Anglicanism. Yeah. He just Anglican's based.
Or like George Mueller. Also, like people who were very, very, very generous. Like John Wesley, what do you got? Oh, John Wesley sermons. There you go. Nice. What was I saying about John Wesley?
Saying he was super generous.
Yeah, he lived like very simply, and he capped his own personal spending and gave away almost everything that he had to the poor all the time. And so like to live a life where you're constantly giving away like everything that you possibly can, like I'm challenged by that because I don't do that, right? Like I try to be smart, and I think I'm going to have a family one day, and I want to save for them. And so I'm thinking about like, how do I steward my things that I have correctly? And there's a tension between that in my life of what do I give away? What do I keep? How do I be smart and intentional and plan for my future so that I can take care of my kids and my kids' kids? But also, man, there's people I know that are not going to make rent this week, and I'm going to help them out 100%. But like, how much do I give, and how much and how often do I give? So I don't know. It is a personal tension for myself, and I know it is for a lot of us. And it's something we need to take very seriously because it's not talked about a lot. But I don't ever want to get to a place where I love money and it's creating in me like another God that isn't like serving God. I don't ever want to be in a place where if God challenged me to give away everything that I have, that I would be like, oh, I don't know if I would. Like I want to always be in a place where God's my provider, and I'd be okay with giving away everything that I have. Even if God was like, hey, you're not going to have money to provide for your family, I'm going to have to do that. And it's going to come down to the wire every time. And you're going to have to trust me. Like, I don't want to live like that, but that's how God challenges us to live a lot of the time. And I have lived like that in the past. But it's genuinely challenging and hard a lot of the time to challenge yourself with those questions of how do I interact with giving my money away to people? And I just always want to err on the side of more generosity, right? Like I don't think literally every scrap of food that you couldn't eat, you don't have to throw away and you need to like give that to somebody, right? But the sentiment of like, do you have extra and could you help needs to be taken more seriously by myself and by the church.
Yeah. It's like when we were kids and you throw out food, you're like, someone in Africa would have eaten that. You ever have that when you were a
Yeah.
kid?
100%. Yeah.
It's like, all right.
My mom would
But
say that and I'd be like, well, the Africans can have my green beans. I don't want them.
I always, like, when I became a little bit more of a smart aleck, I was like, it would get rotten by the time it got there.
Yeah.
Just like way too hyper, literally. But yeah, it's like, as long as you're being intentional to be generous, I think that's the biggest thing. Be intentional to be generous. And as you start that way, you'll probably grow in it, right? You don't have to be like 80-20 giving things away today, if that's not your conviction, right? But, maybe start it, pray, ask God, like, hey, God, what should I do and how can I be more generous? And he'll show you. And then I'm sure as you grow in that, it'll become more and more and more. And I'm sure your lifestyle will become more. It's like a muscle, right? The more you lift, the bigger it gets. The more you can lift, the bigger it gets. So the more generous you are, or you're generous a little bit, you can be like, oh, I don't need that. And then maybe you'll just naturally get to the point where like, oh, I could buy a new car. And you're like, yeah, but I could also just help out someone else. And maybe I think that would be more exciting in the moment, right? At that point, when you come to that big decision, it's probably more exciting for you to give. And the Bible does say it's more blessed to give than receive. So
yeah. And I mean, hey, I don't know what this means, but there's some kind of treasure in heaven you're storing up. I'd rather have treasure for all of eternity than treasure right now. So something to think about.
Someone's going to respond and be like, yeah, but it also says we're going to lay down our treasure at his feet, so you're actually not going to keep it, so it doesn't matter.
Cool. If I have more treasure to lay down at his feet, I'm down for that too.
Yeah, yeah.
I will have the most treasure to lay at Christ's feet.
Yeah. And something to think about with generosity, right?
Just kidding.
Is
joking.
When it comes to being generous, when we are generous, we are imaging Jesus to the world and God to the world. No one has been more generous than Jesus. And so it's just a great way where you get to be like and reflect Jesus. When you feel like the pull of like, oh, I'm giving up this wealth, like and it sucks, or you feel a hardship to be like, oh, I'm so scared to give away this money. Like, what should I do? Like, just remember, like, oh, like Jesus left heaven to make a way for me and has richly provided for me, and I am saved and going to heaven. Like when you remember that heaven exists and you're going there and everything's temporary, and that the guy who created everything loves you and is behind you, then the fear of missing out kind of goes away because your trust is in God, right? And so if you feel a fear to give, it might be like a recognition that your heart is more focused on the things and your efforts than God's. And so that might be a good reason to give. It also is a reason to be like, God, teach me how to do this, and start small and grow into it. But yeah, like if we just continue to remember that Jesus pays our bills and Jesus cares for us, then it's good. And I've had to, and I'm not saying like I'm perfect at this. I've had to remind myself of this very much in the last month, because I've said this in the last couple episodes, but I'm in sales, and that pay fluctuates throughout the month. I don't have a set amount that I'm like, oh, I make this much. It's like, it's up and down, and it can be scary. And I always probably once a week or more, I have to recenter and be like, God will provide the sales that I need to live the life. I do not have to stress. I do not have to worry. I don't have to stress about making more, working more overtime. I can just clock in and clock out, take the sales I'm given, and go home, because the Lord is good and He's going to provide.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean I'm very intentional when I'm working. I'm working incredibly hard, and I am making sure I am taking every opportunity to be as thorough as possible. So I'm not being lazy when I'm working. I'm just trying not to stress outside of work. So when I'm on, I'm on, off, you're off, and just trust in God. It's kind of like probably a good way to go about it.
Yeah, great. I love it. Hopefully this, if you don't have anything else to say, Ethan, I hope this is a challenge to us. Like, it's a challenge to me all the time. Like I'm always wrestling with this, with the Lord. Every week, my church does this like 60 seconds where we pray. And we think about like how the Lord wants us to use our money this week. And every week I'm like, wow, like I'm so challenged by how should I give, or who this week did I have an opportunity to give to that I didn't, or a way I could have given more, but I was just too influenced by taking care of myself or the money that I have that I didn't want to part with, and challenged in like how much I genuinely do like money a little too much, and how much I want to take care of myself and the things that I might want to buy for myself and the selfishness that's in me. And I don't want to get rid of those things. Like I genuinely don't want those things to be a part of me. And so it's a good thing to be challenged by and to go over individually. So hopefully you go through that too.
Yeah, bro. Same. I have such a frustrating tension with romanticizing living simply and being frustrated with living simply. I'm like, like you think about it in your mind, like it's such a vibe living simply, and then you're like in it, you're like, I want the new thing. I want the new thing. I want the shiny thing. You're like,
That's so true.
But one final word I'd say to wrap up and share my little piece would be, you have a responsibility from God to both be wise and set yourself and your family up for success in the future, and live incredibly generous towards others. And so don't neglect neither. Both are godly, both are required, and both will reap rewards.
Amen. Love it.
All right. Well, we will see you guys next week for another episode of Things We Don't Hear in Church. Peace out.
Shoots.